Tonight, from Washington, D.C., Firing Line with William F. Buckley Jr. Tonight's guest, Barry Goldwater. Tonight's topic, the future of conservatism.
My guest today is a gentleman from Arizona who didn't quite almost become President of the United States, but the next thing to it, if you follow me. He is indisputably the best known, and perhaps for that reason the most maligned, conservative in the world. During the campaign in 1964, he was maligned by his professional detractors, painted into a bogeyman, which amply attests to the imaginative ingenuity of the public relations industry. Senator Goldwater is both a Republican and a conservative, terms which he has not found, or at least not yet found, to be mutually exclusive. He acknowledges, as do most observers, the existence of a considerable tug-of-war within the Republican Party, the not unlikely outcome of which is that the rope will part in the middle and both sides will win, or another way of putting it is both sides will lose. On the basis of his experiences in 1964, on which I hope he will touch, we will explore the question of the future of the GOP and of the conservative movement. I take pleasure in introducing a great man and a good friend from whom I'd like to hear first whether it's getting more and more difficult to defeat any incumbent president.
Well, Bill, to answer your question, I think the country has become pretty much a two-party country, a two-term country. So I think it's pretty much up to the president. If he decides to run again, the chances of the Republicans beating him are not excellent. However, if he keeps on with his lack of success in Vietnam, the downfall of NATO, the loss of friends around the country, the growing cost of living in our country, the chances get better. But we don't like to win on those kind of chances.
I see what you mean, but I was wondering also, Senator, whether, as the result of the kind of publicity that is commanded by the chief executive, whether he's a Republican or a Democrat or a whatever, it isn't becoming technically more difficult to beat him, considering the forces that he disposes of.
Yes, I would have to agree to that. In fact, I'd have to agree that this would be true to a large degree with any incumbent, whatever the station is. Not only does he have control, for example, the FCC is going to listen to what the president says, and that has a big effect on equal time, on television time, radio time. The press pays heed to what he wants and doesn't want, because more and more the press is coming under the regulation of the federal government. He has at his disposal untold billions of dollars, such as now being channeled through poverty programs for political purposes only. So any Republican going up against a president, incumbent president, has two pretty good strikes against him.
Gentlemen, Firing Line will continue with William F. Buckley Jr. and Barry Goldwater after this message.
Senator, somebody who was a member of who was a cabinet official with President Eisenhower told me recently that if President Eisenhower had used the power that is technically available now to any president of the United States, Nixon would have won in a landslide. If he had used the power, he said specifically, in the way that Lyndon Johnson used it in the campaign of 1964. Now, I'm asking two questions, not having to do with the differences between Johnson and Eisenhower, but with the question whether or not that power isn't going to be so tempting an instrument for all future presidents to use as to make it extremely difficult to win any election other than one that happens to coincide with the retirement of a particular president.
Well, I don't know who that cabinet member is that told you that, but I think we would agree that had Eisenhower been inclined towards abusing his powers, that he could have changed the result of the election, but thank the Lord he was not that kind of a president. Well, of course, the conservative position is that the most progress has been made in history under conservative philosophy. As a conservative, I don't believe that we have to come up with answers to every problem that's posed by an individual or the other party. Let's take Medicare, for example. This is the most recent one. A project put through without any thought, without many hearings, without any investigation into the mechanics of how it's going to work. The conservative position was, let's take a long look at this thing. It's never been tried in this country before on a government basis. We feel that the private funds were doing a good job. Maybe we could solve the problem with private funds by making tax apparatus available. But instead of this, we have Republicans who feel that we have to do a little more in the field of Medicare in order for us to be elected. I don't believe this is true. I think the public is now awakened to the fact that we have to have two parties, we have to have two positions. In fact, 27 million people agreed to that in 1964, and I keep saying you can't put this group in a telephone booth. So the conservative position, I don't think, should be one of constantly coming up with so-called answers to every problem that a Democratic president or a Democratic Congress or political enemies of ours seem to see in this country. We should be constantly encouraging the Congress to go slow, take it easy, study, research. So I think the party's going to stay under the control of conservatives. I don't know who they're going to be.
Yes, but in exercising that control, the party might very well gravitate towards somebody who doesn't have a reputation as a conservative.
Yes, I think that could be true.
Which would not be treasonable.
Not treasonable, no. I remember the days of the Eisenhower-Taft fight. General Eisenhower was a political unknown as to his philosophy. Taft was Mr. Conservative. The party took very happily General Eisenhower, elected him, and Senator Taft continued to serve his country as a great conservative Republican. So I'm not doctrinaire about this thing. This is one of the troubles that the liberals get into. They become so doctrinaire, so conformist, that if you don't fit their little mold right down to your little pinkies, you're no liberal. And I don't want to see the conservatives ever getting that fix. We've had that trouble with the Birch Society. They say, you either believe in Bob Welch or by God, you're not a Republican. Well, I couldn't agree less. So I do think that the great rank and file of Republicans are conservatives and can argue their point and can stand up against the onslaught of liberal writers who are today, just today, quaking in their boots because Mr. Reagan won in California.